So today we are going to be practice printing our stamps. You carved them. Now it's time to figure out the right amount of ink that you'll be getting from your marker, as well as water that you can use to print your stamp. So to start with, what you're actually gonna do seems a little backwards, but we're gonna wet a small area of your paper with plain water first. All right, markers, you're gonna have to go someplace else because you're rolling around. Let's see if that'll stop it. So I'm gonna start, because it's a practice day. It's okay if you wind up putting too much water the first time, and I'm gonna show you what too much water looks like. So just dip your brush into the water, wipe it on the side, and you're just gonna very quickly and lightly paint with plain water on a larger space. It's better to put a bigger space than it is a smaller space, but you don't want it to be soaked with water. It's just kind of damp. You're gonna use your marker to color your styrofoam. So you can color each section. If I want this square to be green, I can make this green. Maybe I'll do a pattern. I'll do this next section green as well. And then my last section green. I don't have to worry about going inside these indentations. I wanted those to print white anyway, so I'm just going across the surface. I want to be careful that as I am coloring this stamp, I do not touch an area that I've already colored, because the ink will come off on my fingers. And then maybe with my other colors, I'll do another thing. So while I'm coloring this, the paper's drying just a tad, which is a good thing because you don't want it to be soaking wet. So we're gonna try, once I'm done coloring it, to very carefully pick up my stamp, find the center, and I'm going to lay it down and then press. I can use the back of one of my markers as almost like a brayer to really push this image down onto the paper. You do not want to move it, because if you move it, it's gonna mess up the image. So you want to always make sure you're holding one side of it, and if you need to press the other side, you pick it up and move your fingers to a different spot to press. When I lift this up, I have an awesome print of my stamp. How cool is that? Maybe today you want to see what too much water looks like. So one of the biggest mistakes that some people can do is they might color their stamp first. And then they forget, they're like, oh my gosh, I've already started coloring. I forgot to put the water on my paper. So that can sometimes be a problem if it's too wet too fast. So if I quickly throw down a lot of water, or I've colored my marker, this ink can start drying, which can stop that from printing. But worst case scenario is you have too much water. So Mrs. Hops is really gonna put a lot. And then when I print my stamp and I rub on it, because there's too much water and it's like a puddle, it's gonna activate the ink of the marker, and look what's happening. Ooh, you can see it's actually oozing out the side. And when I pull this up, oh, look at that image. Things print and they run together, and it just looks like a blob as compared to each line being unique and different and able to see all of those indentations. If you put too much water, you cannot, because this is puddling on there, go back on here. So use a dry piece of paper towel and just dab your stamp to try to clean it. This is also a good thing if you wanted to change colors, because maybe you didn't like the way something looked. This is the perfect chance for you to practice and come up with different designs. Maybe you wanted to keep the center green, but instead of doing a pattern, you wanted to make each section a different color. So today is the day to kind of really test out your designs to see if what you're gonna do is gonna work, but don't make the mistake last time. Remember, paint it with the water first, or at least if you forgot about that part and you started coloring it already, give it a second to dry before you print it. So I'm gonna go over here, I'm gonna finish coloring these sections. Meanwhile, I'm looking at this to make sure that it is printed. I want to be careful that as I'm coloring, I don't mark on my paper, because that's one way to make an error or a mistake as well. So sometimes coloring on a different part so you don't accidentally mark on it, so move it to a different section. Maybe you have a messy mat somewhere to catch your marker edges, because you do have to color this quickly too, but you don't want it to be so fast that things run together. So my square has to be in the center. I just changed the colors. So I'm gonna make sure that this air is pointing there. I'm gonna press this down and use one of my markers to rub very carefully. So this is gonna give me the option of seeing some of the different ways to color my stamp. When I pick this up, you can see all of the different images, and look how cool that looks with the many, many colors. The other last option that you have to do, I'm gonna wash this one off really quickly, is let's say I wanna take a color and I want to see what happens if colors blend. So I can color over multiple sections with my markers, and then on the actual surface, overlap some colors. So the blue is gonna mix with the purple a little bit to make a bluish purple. And then maybe down here, it'll mix with my green, which somehow rolled away and I don't know where it is, so I'll grab a different one to make a different bluish green. Oh, but again, look, I forgot about that water. So I'm gonna paint it very carefully. One way to test is to turn your head sideways, see if it looks like it's a puddle. If it is too dry or too wet, you can wave it and fan it and just wait a minute or so. You can also take a paper towel and just dab up some of that extra moisture. I'm gonna find that square, it's supposed to be in my center, lay that down, press and rub to make my print. And when I pull this up, you can see how the colors blended, and it makes this really cool, almost rainbow color wheel effect. So there's a couple of different options that you could do for your final coloring. Now that we've practiced this, next week you'll decide which one you like the most, and you'll do that same technique colored the same way in all 4 of your quadrants. Pretty cool.